Okay, wait, before you dislike the video, let me explain. I love Gojo. He's my favorite character in Jujutsu Kaisen along with my boy Todo, and I think he's one of the best overpowered anime characters of this era. But Gojo's limitless power and limitless Riz are the very reasons why the author of JJK has to keep taking him out of the story time after time. And it's also the reason why people are now freaking out and threatening to drop Jujutsu Kaisen because of what happened to Gojo. In this video, I will cover 3 key points that explain why Gojo is both the best character in JJK and the absolute worst character for the overall story. Just hear me out. Point number 3 will definitely intrigue you, so let's get into it. Jumping right into point number 1, Gojo is overpowered. Yeah, like obviously, Gojo is an absolute menace to the entire sorcerer world. Just by being born, he completely messed up the balance of the universe. Curses literally had to become stronger after he was born to make up for the fact that the sorcerers were about to become so stacked. He was the first person in 400 years to be born with both the 6 eyes and limitless. He's also one of the strongest sorcerers in the history of the world, and he single-handedly carried the Gojo clan to the very height of power and influence. The other major sorcerer families were so scared of him that they tried to assassinate him when he was a little kid. Like, they were literally so scared of this child that they wanted to kill him. But the assassins they hired couldn't even come close to hurting Gojo. He quickly grew into the undisputed strongest sorcerer of the modern era, and he would say that he was also the strongest sorcerer of all time. He is so strong that if technology ran on cursed energy rather than like gas or electricity, Gojo would apparently be able to power the entire United States on his own. In the past, Geto said that Gojo has the power to destroy all of humanity. So yeah, this guy is incredibly powerful, and he knows it. Gojo is supremely confident, and he said himself that throughout heaven and earth, he alone is the honored one. I mean, at one point he was even bragging that he could take the King of Curses Sukuna in his prime. To the absolute delight of the fans, Gojo would eventually get the chance to face Sukuna in battle, but although that fight was epic, it also led to the wildest and most controversial moments in the entire series. It's a moment that we as fans are still trying to process, and if it's not handled extremely carefully going forward, it could bring down the entire story of Jujutsu Kaisen. If you're wondering what I mean by that, stick around, you're about to find out. But okay, you guys get it, Gojo is overpowered, so what? There are lots of overpowered characters in anime and manga, and that doesn't have to screw up the whole series. This is where I raise you point number 2, Gojo's Riz. It's not just that Gojo is a supremely overpowered character who just kind of stays in the background or is someone we know about but only really get to meet towards the end of the story. He shows up right at the beginning to mentor Yuji and the other students, and he is such a charismatic badass that he absolutely steals the show. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of great characters in JJK, but Gojo is definitely my personal favorite, and whenever he is on screen, he upstages everyone. Initially, the only one who came close to stealing Gojo's thunder was Toji, but in the end it was curtains for Toji as well. I mean, even ℂ𝕂, the author, knows how much of a fan favorite Gojo is, because the prequel deals heavily with Gojo and his friendship with Geto, and there's also an entire arc in the manga that focuses on Gojo's backstory. But then you're probably thinking, okay, Gojo is overpowered, and he is a fan favorite Jujutsu Rizzler, so what? The issue is that Gojo is not the main character. He is a mentor side character who is there to guide Yuji, Nobara, and Megumi through their journey. But a personality like Gojo's is too big to be contained by the label of a side character. And this really begins to show during the Shibuya incident. Oh, by the way, can you do me a big favor and drop a like right now to make up for all the dislikes I'm gonna get for saying the word Rizzler? Thank you so much. As I said earlier, when Gojo was born, curses literally had to get stronger in order to make up for how stacked the sorcerer side became thanks to his birth. This is actually symbolic of what the author ℂ𝕂 had to deal with when the plot really got going, and especially after we hit the big boy arcs like Shibuya. Because Gojo is so strong, the villains have to be extremely strong as well. Otherwise, Gojo will easily crush them and the story would be boring. There would be no tension since Gojo would solo everyone easily. So, ℂ𝕂 had to give us extremely powerful curses and overpowered ancient enemies like Kenjaku and Sukuna, just so they could be a challenge for Gojo. But here's the problem. Our main character Yuji, along with other characters like Nobara and Megumi, are still just first year students, so it doesn't make sense for them to already be able to take on these insanely powerful villains. Now, of course, if the other characters aren't strong enough on their own to take out the villains, they can always work together and use teamwork to come out on top. But as long as Gojo is around, teamwork seems kind of pointless because Gojo can just come and take care of it much quicker and easier. Why risk your life and worry about teamwork when you have the strongest sorcerer of the modern era on speed dial? All of this comes together into point number 3. As long as Gojo is around, the other characters can't grow. With Gojo, ℂ𝕂𝔻 created a Riz monster, an overpowered and incredibly popular character whom everyone loves, but a character whose very existence makes it almost impossible for the other characters like Yuji to actually grow. Basically, the only way to stop Gojo from always stealing the show and the only way to allow less powerful characters like Yuji to step up and become great sorcerers in their own right is to remove Gojo from the story. This is exactly what ℂ𝕂𝔻 does in Shibuya. Gojo is taken out of the picture by being sealed away, and then the other characters are forced to step up and take responsibility for saving the world and for rescuing Gojo. But even though this Gojo hiatus allowed other characters to grow and shine, you better believe that a ton of people in the JJK fan community were complaining and saying, "Where's Gojo? We need Gojo. I'm not reading until they bring back Gojo," and so on. Eventually, ℂ𝕂𝔻 gave in and Gojo was released, but then as soon as he came out of the seal, we went right back to the same setup. Gojo came out fast and furious, rushed out to face off against Kenjaku and Sukuna, and he stole the show once again. Everything after that was first a countdown to the big Gojo vs Sukuna fight, and then when the fight started, the entire focus was on the fight itself. Yuji and the other sorcerers were literally watching from the sidelines as the big battle went down, and for most of it they were just like commentators giving us a play-by-play of what was happening in the fight. At this point, ℂ𝕂𝔻 basically had 3 options. Option 1, Gojo wins. If this happens, then the story is basically over. Sukuna is by far the strongest villain, and if he loses, then Gojo just sweeps Kenjaku and all the rest, and it's game over. You either have to bring in a new alien villain like Kaguya out of nowhere to keep things challenging for Gojo, or the good guys win and it ends there. Option 2, the fight ends in some kind of draw. Either both Gojo and Sukuna die, or the fight just ends with both of them living to fight another day, but then you're just delaying the inevitable round 2 between them. It's kind of like MHA where we had Deku versus Shigaraki in Jakku, and then a few arcs pass, and then again we have Deku versus Shigaraki in the final arc. There was always gonna be a rematch. Option 3 is what actually happened, although the way it happened made a lot of people very angry. Chapter 235 ended with Gojo wrecking Sukuna, and in the final panel, Kusakabe even declared that Gojo won. Then, in the very next chapter, things switched up completely as we learned that Gojo had apparently been killed off screen. So not only did Gojo not win, all of a sudden he is now dead and Sukuna is the winner. Even if you think that Sukuna killing Gojo makes sense and that it's a good twist for the story, the way it was done caused major whiplash for a lot of people, myself included, and a ton of the most dedicated Gojo stans were really mad. People were threatening to drop the JJK manga if Gojo wasn't brought back somehow. They were saying that without Gojo, the other sorcerers have no way of defeating Sukuna, and if they do win in the end, it's gonna be an ass pull. They were saying that all the other fights were gonna be boring and anticlimactic after the big Gojo-Sukuna fight, and so on. I mean, you guys are anime fans, you know what happens on social media every time there's even a little bit of controversy in an anime or manga. I don't have to explain it to you. Again, we know why ℂ𝕂𝔻 felt like Gojo had to be removed from the story, just like he was in Shibuya. We can't have all the other characters, including the main characters like Yuji, just standing on the sidelines and giving us a play-by-play of the fight. They need to do something more. They need to play a role in actually defeating Sukuna. But when you're trying to remove a character who is larger than life and who is as popular as Gojo, it's always going to be difficult, and there's always going to be some fan backlash. That is especially true if you're planning to remove the characters suddenly and abruptly and off screen. That is where we are at this moment. Jujutsu Kaisen is Gojo-less for a second time, and the focus is now on all the other characters scrambling to somehow defeat full power Sukuna. But realistically, can they really do it without it looking like an ass pull? Where will the story go from here? Drop me a line in the comments if you have some theories about how Sukuna could be defeated without Gojo. Nevertheless, there is another option that a lot of Gojo copers have been hoping for. When Gojo was seemingly killed, his head was not damaged, meaning that there is still some possibility of him surviving or coming back from the dead using a secret technique or power. If that happens and Gojo helps to defeat Sukuna together with the other sorcerers, then Sukuna's defeat won't feel like an ass pull. But then people will of course say that Gojo has plot armor and that his apparent death was a cheap fake out. So in the end, it's kinda like ℂ𝕂𝔻 can't win. He can't just have Gojo single-handedly solving all the problems in the story, but Gojo is such an epic and popular character that removing him causes fans to revolt. If Gojo somehow manages to come back, then those fans will be happier, but then other fans will be upset about the fake out. So that is how Gojo accidentally ruined ℂ𝕂𝔻's plans for JJK. You can't just have him steal the show and defeat every villain, but he's too popular to remove from the story without causing massive backlash. I still think that ℂ𝕂𝔻 can pull off an excellent ending to the story, but we gotta be real, it's not going to be easy. If ℂ𝕂𝔻 can really pull it off, he deserves limitless respect. Now, if you're a Gojo coper like me and you're wondering how he could still possibly return from the dead, check out my video on how Gojo could become a vengeful spirit like his ancestor ℂ𝕂𝔻 Sugawara and evolve beyond humanity like Master Tengen, link on screen and in the description. Drop a like and subscribe if you want to keep coping together, and I'll see you in the next video.